Hey everybody, this is Xipooo from Renegade Death Squad, and I'm going to talk to you about a new controller that I just bought recently. I got it for 40 bucks over at Fry's plus tax. I don't know exactly what it all came out to, but you may have already seen this. You may have already seen some reviews about it, but I wanted to give you my opinion because I'm going to go into some detail here that you might be really interested in. The controller is called the MadCatz, well, it's made by MadCatz. It's actually a Call of Duty Black Ops Special Edition controller. You'll notice that the layout is very similar to the original, and I'll just show you. Here's the 6-axis. Okay, the controller is very, very similar, and the layout and the functions of the buttons are basically the same. I guess probably immediately you would notice that the start button and PlayStation button and select button are all up and down, whereas opposed to on these 6-axis, they're kind of next to each other. Kind of, you can see they're kind of side by side. Okay, so that's for the front layout. One of the neat things that it does do is if you flip the switch, ooh, it glows underneath the analog sticks. I got the red one. You can get, I guess there's 3 different colors. I think there's blue and I don't remember. This is like yellow or something. I don't remember. But this one is the red one, which I don't think shows up too good on my camera. It looks like pink, doesn't it? Anyway, let's see. It does have on the front, it does have an internal battery, so you don't have to keep replacing batteries or anything. There's the USB port that you plug it into, just like any other 6-axis controller, so it charges up. However, you cannot control it using that little cable. You actually have to have the USB port plugged in. This is just the adapter that connects the PlayStation to here. So it takes up a USB slot in order for this particular thing to work, but that's not a big deal. I have an adapter for I got a PlayStation Slim, PlayStation 3 Slim, and I got a little adapter that allows me to have a handy dandy remote that I can control watching my movies and my Netflix. And it's got an expansion, so I got 4 USB ports on there, which is all cool. Actually, you may not have known this, you can use any USB expansion at all on the PlayStation. You just go down to the store for like 10, 15 bucks, you can get a regular one. You don't have to spend 40 bucks on a PlayStation one. Anyway, so let's talk about the controller here. Oh, I do need to show you that there are also buttons on the bottom. And this is actually the big reason why anybody would buy this thing, is because there's these 2 buttons here. Actually, your middle fingers go on them, so you're like this, okay? So your middle fingers rest on these 2 buttons and they press down, okay? Now, underneath those 2 buttons are 2 switches. There's one right there and one right there, okay? And these switch over, left, right, etc. Now, based upon where these switches are located, it will change these buttons to mean either star, triangle, square, X, okay? What it also does is it could be your L3 and R3 buttons, so they could basically, for Black Ops, it's your knifing button or your running button, so it causes you to run, or you can cause you to knife just by pressing with your middle fingers on the bottom, which is, that might be useful. But the main reason why this controller even has a market is, and the whole reason they advertise it, is for sniping. Okay, they think it's a sniper's controller. That's because with those 2 buttons on the bottom, you can actually you can slow down the rotation of the analog sticks. Okay, so when you press this left, right, up, down, all that good stuff, you can actually slow the rotation down to about half. I don't know exactly the speed, but I think it's about half. Which supposedly, for being a sniper, means that your aim is going to slow down. So even though I push this all the way over, it's only going to go at half speed. Okay, which is pretty cool. I mean, it's a neat, novel idea. I think it probably would be useful for some people, especially those of you that want to snipe. Newbies. Sorry. No one wants to get up close in a close quarters battle anymore, I guess. So let's talk about, well, first of all, let me just say, on a scale of 1 to 5, I would give this about a 2. Maybe, at the most. I hate this controller. It is awful. And I'm going to tell you some of the reasons why. First of all, the first thing, which really is actually kind of not really all that important, you'll notice that the thumb pad or the controller pad here, you know, you've got your basically looks like the old Nintendo style, you know, all four buttons as one button, as opposed to the six-axis, which has, you'll notice, four independent buttons. That may not seem like a big deal, but you know, it's not when I press one like the whole all the others also register or anything like that. It's just that there's so much resistance to this that sometimes, you know, if you don't hit it just right, it won't register. So sometimes you end up hitting it 2 or 3 times before it actually registers that you've hit the button. And, you know, luckily not a lot of games rely upon this particular pad, but if you play a lot of games that do, it's going to be completely worthless to you. You're gonna just throw this thing in the trash can, or you might try to actually return it for money. The other thing is that honestly, these buttons are they don't register very well. If I press down on I'm pressing down on R1 here, and I can't even really tell. It's very sponge-like. It's not, you know, with the six-axis, when you press it down, you press it down and it stops, and there's very little resistance until you reach the bottom. So when you're pressing it, you immediately know that if I trigger it, it's going to go and it's going to do something. But with this particular controller, it's so spongy that you have to press down harder and more firmly before it hits the bottom, and you don't really know where bottom is. It's kind of you know, you don't know if you've actually gotten it all the way down or not. So obviously, if you have to apply more pressure in order to push a button down, especially your trigger fingers, that's bad news right off the bat. I don't know why you would make a controller just on that alone. I'd give this thing a really poor rating. But they went further with their poor design. You'll notice that the trigger, the R2 and L2, are actually kind of like they're like little springboards that are down, and these take a ton of resistance in order to press down. But the gap between your R1 and R2 and L1 and L2, you'll notice there's a big old gap there. They're not on the same level like they are with the six-axis, okay? So there's a further gap that you actually have to jump, okay? Because with the original six-axis, I mean, they're about at the same level, okay? But here, there's a gap where you actually have to drop down in order to get to the trigger. So that makes for an even greater distance that your finger has to travel in order to get there. And when you're playing first-person shooter games, duh, you know, the least amount of space that your finger has to cover and the least amount of resistance that your finger has to have in order to apply, you know, to that trigger is what you really want. You want the least amount of resistance, and you want the shortest distance between each button. And this thing, I mean, it's even wider. I mean, if I compare the two, it's actually, I know it's kind of hard to tell on camera, but it's actually a little bit wider than the six-axis. It's further apart. Everything is spread out. So there's a bigger gap between all the buttons. There's more resistance to pressing any of the buttons. And, oh yeah, it lights up. Oh yeah, that's the whole reason I want to get this thing, is because it lights up. And I know that looks kind of pink on my camera. The camera's kind of skewing that, but that's actually red. It's very dark red, actually, but for some reason the camera picks it up as pink. Go figure. So now that's still not the extent of how badly designed this thing is. Um, your analog sticks that make you move left, right, up, down, you know, all your rotation and everything, these have a ton of resistance on them. They're basically like, I mean, I could probably launch like cattle off this thing. It's so spring-like in its resistance. It just wants to catapult anything that tries to cause it to rotate. It's just horrible. I cannot describe how incredibly badly they designed this thing. So with that kind of resistance, I mean, you're just think about it. If you have to apply that kind of pressure, that kind of, you know, pressure to make it go, because it's essentially resisting your desire to move your guy in the direction you want it to. What often happens is you over pressure. You know, you put too much pressure on it, it causes your guy to over rotate, and your aim is all scraggly and everything. And I've worked on this thing a tremendous amount of time to try to get it right. Anyway, if you guys want to hit me up with any comments, I'd appreciate it. You know where to get a hold of me.